and welcome everyone to another episode of Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. I am your host, Nina Joshi. A couple of quick announcements before I bring on our guest for today. We have our March symposium coming up, Transforming Health Through Digital Tools. Make sure that you get your tickets for that incredible event. And of course, we also have our HitLab Innovators Summit in person in New York City in May. Make sure you scan the QR code or use the link in the chat to get the tickets for that incredible event as well. And with that, I would like to formally introduce our guest for today, Bianca Kroupa, who is the Associate Director for Innovation Programs and Implementations at Organon. As you know, we love questions here at Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. So if you have any for Bianca, please use the Q&A feature or the chat, and I'll make sure that we get to it. With that, thank you so much for being here, Bianca.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
I am so excited to not only learn more about the work that you're doing, but also more about yourself and your career journey. But maybe a great place to start, Bianca, would be if you could just tell us a little bit more about your background and really the career journey, how you transitioned into your current role as an associate director.
Yes, definitely. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. So my name is Bianca Kroupa. I work in Organon. We're a pharmaceutical company that's focused on women's health. Though our portfolio continues to grow, that's really our roots. And I work on the commercial innovation team, which supports all of our brands on strategic partnerships. So a lot of my work is working with the startup community, identifying ways we can partner to better women's health. So excited to be here. A little of my background and how I kind of transitioned into my current role. So I started my career in pharma. I have always been in pharma. I started on the agency side as a media planner and buyer. And I think ending up in pharma was half intentional and half not. The intentional part being I was pre-med in college and I thought I might become a clinician for a while there. But the unintentional part being I'm from Philadelphia and it's just a big pharma city. A lot of pharma manufacturers are based here. So part of it was just the luck of the draw of where I'm from.
It was meant to be. That's so funny.
Yes, I think so.
And I'm so curious, I think, kind of speaking a little bit about your role and the fact that you've kind of been so centered in pharma, whether it's starting, even from the pre-med days, and I feel like the pre-med to pharma pipeline is very tried and true.
Yeah.
I'm so curious, what really inspired you to be a kind of sitting here? Because I think the pharma landscape is so diverse. And you really seem to kind of be at this intersection of like pharma, innovation, the ops. What was there kind of some moment that really led you to have this particular like Venn diagram of interest with your current role?
Yeah. So over my years in agency, I raised my hand to go work on the paid social team when it was created. And I have to credit working on paid social for being what made me fall in love with innovation. Anyone who's worked in paid social or programmatic, these really innovative spaces for pharma, will tell you that it almost becomes addictive when you work in the gray areas of compliance and you're trying to figure out the rest of the world has these best practices for my channel, but this is what pharma can compliantly do. So where do we find the middle ground? And so I just became so accustomed to building guidance for new programs that eventually social became a little bit, more known and understood. And I was ready for what's next. And it was really to move toward kind of a VC model. And so that's what brought me into the space that I work in now. And my agency background still serves me very well every day when it comes to implementation in my current role, for sure.
That's so fascinating. And I think for all of us that work in the broader healthcare landscape, the compliance, regulatory, like, can't cross the line, but get close to the line scenario is something I think we're all kind of familiar with. So it's really interesting to kind of hear you talk about it from a paid social perspective. I think that aspect is so fascinating. I'm so curious, were there any interesting like learnings that you got from just your time being in the paid social world?
Yeah, I still love paid social, and it's a passion point for me. Something that falls under my remit here at Organon is still the relationship owning enterprise media with my agency of record. And so I love that I still get to do a piece of that in my current role. But a kind of like shining moment, probably working in paid social, was I was part of the team that launched the first Reddit AMA in pharma. Um,
Wow. That's
yeah, and that
awesome.
was so exciting. We really got to set the groundwork for something that pharma thought would never be compliant and we could never do, and to give at that time men and women the opportunity to come forward in a kind of pseudo anonymous way and ask questions that maybe they were even afraid to ask their physician who they see, or they didn't have that continuity of care, and they could come to a place like Reddit and get real medical answers from a doctor who works in the space every day. That was something really rewarding.
That is incredible. As someone that is very deeply on Reddit, that I did not know that you all were the ones that had that launched that first AMA. That's so fascinating. And I think to your point too around, being able to facilitate these environments where you really get to talk to the community and kind of ask these, questions that may be more sensitive or even stigmatized as well, I think is such a win. So it's so incredible that that's something that you all were involved in.
Yeah, yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was definitely building that out, and the Reddit team was amazing. Could not have done it without them. They have been so dedicated to health from the beginning. So if you're on the line and you are someone in an agency or pharma who isn't engaging with that team, you absolutely should. They really have doubled down on their commitment to pharma, and I feel like you'll be safe there. So yeah, kudos to the Reddit team for helping make that happen.
That's so awesome. Are you noticing, I would say you brought up an interesting kind of point around Reddit and like their vision or kind of some of the promise what they're kind of looking forward to and how they are so health forward. Are you kind of noticing a broader trend around like social media more broadly with this type of information? Because I would imagine with COVID, right? And like Dr. Fauci was like on TikTok talking about all of
Yeah.
these things. There seems to definitely be more of this push towards social media as an engine for health information. So curious to see if you've seen it on the other side as well.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's some type of statistic that Reddit is used almost as much as Google now as a search engine. And I know TikTok is right on their heels. A shout out to our friends at TikTok for becoming a bit of a search engine as well. So yes, we continue to see growth in conversations. I mean, working in the space that we do, women's health, it is a very hot topic, especially given the climate we're in right now. So yes, it's super important that we have a pulse on what's happening in the industry, what those conversations look like, so we can make sure we're addressing any misinformation. And also, we're just hearing what our community is looking for and needs, and we can proactively address that in our pipeline and make sure we're developing things that are what women are actually asking for.
Absolutely. One of the other things that you had also mentioned, Bianca, is kind of the work that you do more on like the partnership side of the house. I'm so kind of curious to get your thoughts and insights around the collaboration aspect and kind of what that looks like, how you all kind of stand something like that up and all the partnership space.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been so lucky at Organon to get to partner with a lot of startups, and they're able to provide patient support in a way that I could only dream of providing it in the manufacturer space. When a startup builds a community and a customer base around a condition that we treat, they are
Mhm.
raising the tide that raises all boats. All women are going to benefit from it, and we as a company benefit from it. So it's in my best interest to make sure that I'm finding partners that are doing that work
Mhm.
and helping them in whatever way I can to better their business. So whether that's sending traffic to their site by featuring them on one of our brand.coms, helping them gain more favorable pricing if they are someone who is like a low cost clinic who buys from us. How can I make sure that every round of fundraising that they're doing goes as far as possible? Can I get them favorable pricing? Sometimes it's providing them with really high quality peer reviewed resources so they don't have to develop
Mhm.
them for their patients, because we're already doing that on our side. So it's licensed to that. So every partnership is unique, but every partnership conversation starts out as building a relationship. And then from there, it is, what are you trying to do that we can help you accomplish? Is it get more HCPs to know who you are? Is it build your social following? And then we kind of plug in there. We build the whole program around what that startup needs to get to the next level.
That is absolutely incredible. And for anyone on the call that is a startup that is, wanting to raise their hand or even or is even in a place right now where they're thinking about partnerships more broadly, do you have any just words of wisdom, any advice, anything for them as they're kind of starting to think about what partnerships may look like for them and their particular solution?
Yeah. I think find the company that aligns with you and don't be afraid to do the outreach. And hopefully you get lucky and you have a partnership dedicated person at that pharma company. There's a group of us that our pharma companies, they're usually more medium size, are taking that initiative to build out a role like mine. And if you can make that connection with that person, you'll have that resource who can go in and kind of fight for your inclusion and plans and be that internal advocate for you. Because I think a lot of times when you don't get a lot of traction, that's why. It's mostly because there just isn't anyone to take it forward. The bandwidth just isn't there. So there is definitely a network of us, and I know HitLab knows who's in that network that we want to talk to you. And so put your energy into talking to us. And the other thing I would say is don't be afraid that we can't do anything. Like we talked about regulatory a little bit earlier, and I think there's sometimes a feeling that nothing will be possible. And it absolutely is. There's never been a program that we've wanted to do with a partner that has been an outright no. Maybe we had to make some tweaks. And I know that I'm really lucky here at Organon to have a regulatory team that really works with me. They are such an innovation-hearted group of individuals. So don't be afraid to do the outreach. Like we want to hear from you, and don't sell yourself short because the work you guys are doing is amazing.
That's incredible, Bianca. Wow, I mean, you just inspired me. I love that. And I think that is what really spoke to me is I think finding alignment and kind of finding people where there is so much of that like shared mission and vision. I think that's such a great launch pad for any of those types of conversations for folks on the call that are kind of starting to think more strategically about partnerships. And now I'm so curious too, because you spend so much of your time in this space, in kind of the startup space, the innovation space. I'm just so curious, since you also have, eyes and ears in this area, are there
Yeah.
any particular just either, innovations or areas of interest within women's health that you are excited about, things that kind of drive you as you are like looking into the startup land?
Yes. So I'll give the same answer as everyone, which is AI, but I'll give you my take on why we're so excited about AI. So specifically, AI's ability to predict patient outcomes. So AI, we know, is mining data faster than 1,000 computers could do over the next 1,000 years in milliseconds. And what that allows it to do is pull together thousands of patient cases to help us identify earlier symptoms of conditions. So I'll give an example of like preeclampsia. We previously knew a couple of the symptoms that people have, but we didn't know the vast majority of them. And by AI pulling together all of the thousands of patient cases that are available in a given EHR, we can figure out what some of those symptoms might have been weeks before and prevent that condition from ever happening. The other really cool thing AI can do is it works in natural language. So we know that a lot of medical texts were written from the perspective of male symptoms. Not just the symptoms men have that are different from women, but the way they describe them differently than women. So it's really important that with that natural language, we can figure out, oh, this is a symptom that women and men might experience, but she's describing it in a different way. And we need to make sure that doctors are listening for that type of language that's a little more women specific.
I love that. And I think that you bring up such a good point around, I think, the natural language processing aspect of it. But I think the fact that there is so much nuance as a patient, as you're even describing your symptoms, or even what your experience with those symptoms may be. So I think that's so fascinating. You are right. AI it's such a hot topic, but I really love kind of the aspect of health outcomes and some of those unmet needs and how it can be a solution for that.
Yeah.
I think that's incredible. And of course, I can't talk to you about AI without getting your thoughts on, we are in a bit of a regulated environment.
Yeah.
So curious, what are some of the more, and AI or not, I think just broadly too, I'm so curious, what are some of like the regulatory challenges that pharma is really facing when kind of integrating some of these really cutting edge, incredible digital health solutions into just the broader ecosystem?
Totally. A super simple activation anywhere else could be a 3 to 6 month review situation here in pharma. But yeah, I'm super lucky to have, again, a really innovation forward regulatory team. But I would say one thing I would encourage any pharma company to do, if you're not already, is to look into and think about developing an innovation review model. So what that means is instead of having lots of individual stakeholders and trying to make these partnerships, more innovative programs fit into the mold of like a traditional MLR process. In an IRC or IRM model, you have stakeholders who have raised their hand and said, I want to be part of this. I want to be part of something innovative, and I'm willing to work in the gray area to do that. So every
Mm.
time we have a new partner come through, I have my squad who I go to, and I have representation from medical, legal, compliance, and they all join me on the phone, and I give them the TLDR on what's going to happen with this partner and who they are and why it's really important to us and what the business case is. And they raise their hands to work on that project with me, knowing that there's going to be a lot of unknown. We're going to build a lot of things as we go. Um, so I think if you are, an organization, aim for that as your goal because it makes everything so much smoother. And if you're a startup working with an organization, make that suggestion. Maybe they haven't thought of it before, and it will really make sure you have, again, the people in the room who are going to be advocates for you versus adversaries. I, again, have never had a program that I wanted to do that we couldn't with a couple of tweaks. Sometimes, it can be a little bit more challenging, but a lot of times you could pull real world evidence in and can really get things through that you wouldn't have expected for everyone's greater good. So I think that innovation review model, leading with innovation, is going to be the key.
I absolutely love that. And I think you speak of two things that just are making me so excited. I think the first is really just a culture around innovation, around kind of really standing up these ideas. And I think it is kind of incredible to see, hopefully that is something that I've been finding myself of just more, there's an appetite kind of in these larger organizations for something like this, which I think is incredible. And I love how you are just kind of speaking to the tenacity aspect of it as well, which I think is very important. So I think it is a little bit
Yeah.
of both of the environment and also just, you kind of having that tenacity to go forth and kind of create something.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And we bring in companies that we admire to keep us in that innovation mindset. So we host an innovation mindset series every quarter where we'll bring in, we've had some of our startup partners come in and be on a panel for us. We've had TikTok come in because that company is just known to have such a culture of innovation, and ask them, what processes are you putting in place to make sure that everyone is thinking in that way? So we're taking a lot of notes from the best in the industry and the best beyond just our industry, to make sure that we are doing everything we can to really operate very lean and mean, as much as you can in a pharma environment.
Yeah, sometimes, having some inspiration, having some best use cases is a great motivator. So I absolutely
Yeah.
love that. That's so incredible. And I have so many more questions to ask, but I do want to get to some questions that we have from our audience. So one of our audience members is asking, what are some key issues to highlight when reaching out for a partnership? So maybe if you're a startup, you're looking to reach out for a partnership, is there any kind of things that they should really kind of have top of mind?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's any like specific key issues. A lot of times it's just come to us with transparency. We can sign an NDA right off the bat. A lot of times we'll be asked to do that so you can have really transparent conversations and really be forthcoming with us in what it is you're looking to get out of this. Tell us where you stand and the areas where you could really use work, and then let us come back to you with some ideas. But there's not anything I see consistently from partners where I'm like, oh, that's a problem, that's a red flag. Typically, it's just getting to the root of what we can really do together and what you're looking to get out of the engagement, that objective, being clear with that, and coming into the conversation knowing what that could be. And that's really the jumping off point for us.
That's amazing. And for you, Bianca, do you have a particular stage of a company that is like you typically tend to work with, or is it kind of across the board pre-seed to Series D?
Yeah, it's across the board. For me, a little earlier the better, especially if you're not, in a place where you plan to be acquired anytime soon, or if that's not on your roadmap at all. I love working with someone who's earlier in their journey because usually we can really work together to almost develop your business together as you go, and that ultimately, again, it's going to benefit the whole industry if we can do that. So I'm open. I know some pharma companies do prefer people that are a little further along in their fundraising journey. But again, knowing a lot of times that things move quickly in the startup landscape, and these programs are going to take several months to pull together anyway. So I don't have that as a criteria on my rubric.
That's super helpful. And we have another question. It's also more specific to partnerships, but I think it's actually a great question more broadly. When it comes to like just engaging with someone, right? Like, is there a preferred method? Is kind of just the email cold calling the
Yeah,
move? Like, yes, perfect.
that's a great question. So I get a lot of my outreach through either attending networking events or through LinkedIn. A lot of folks reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you have my professional email, you're more than welcome to hop into my inbox, but it's a nightmare every day. So it'll just take me a little while to get back to you. My LinkedIn, especially being a social girly, I will probably see that notification a lot faster. It's probably easier to find me that way. So I prefer LinkedIn. And actually, I do a lot of scouting of startups through LinkedIn too, because sometimes
Awesome.
that's the easiest way to figure out who the person who's managing partnerships is. So a lot of business happens in the startup and innovation world through LinkedIn.
We love it. The power of LinkedIn. I think that's
Yeah.
awesome. Great. And then we have another question from the audience. Are there any particular areas of women's health that is a current focus for you or for the company?
Yeah, absolutely. Contraceptives continue to be a really hot topic. We want to make sure that regardless of the political landscape we find ourselves in, that women have an array of options. And so that kind of continues to be an area of focus for us. And then outside of that, we recently had an acquisition at our company into the dermatology space. And that's really exciting because a lot of dermatology conditions impact women more than men. And also, a lot of times, dermatology conditions have pediatric implications. And we know from the data that a lot of times it's the woman in the household who's making those care decisions for the children. So that's really how we've continued to expand our portfolio, has been looking at products in a new way and thinking it's not just in reproductive or sexual health that women need more attention and we need to do more data and provide more options. It's in her whole care journey from beginning to end. So it's kind of those more alternative spaces that impact women more, but maybe aren't so traditionally women's health focused. That's where we're continuing to grow.
I love that. That's incredible. And I'm very curious to see the dermatology angle because I think to your point, I think there's so much incredible work that can be done that still needs to be done. So I
Yeah.
think some of those other areas I think are going to be so powerful. I love that. We have
Yeah.
another question, kind of speaking to the earlier part of our conversation when we were talking a little bit about Reddit and TikTok. Um, so one of the questions was around for someone that is maybe looking to, have a social media presence for their company. Is it kind of like all channels are equal? Should they start at a specific social media platform? Any kind of insights there?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think your demographic matters a lot.
Mm,
So look into which demographic where your demographic specifically likes to sit and consume their content. And then a competitive audit can be really helpful. So see where other people that are in the space are seeing a lot of success, and that can be a good starting place. 5 years ago, I would have told you to start on Meta, but today I would tell you to start on TikTok if you are in the women's health space, because that is just a space that continues to explode. And Reddit tends to be kind of our secret weapon if it's an area that people do want to be more anonymous in. If they feel uncomfortable in that disease state, then they're not going to have their friends or their family potentially see what they're posting about on Reddit. They're probably there as contraceptive girl or obesity girl. They're there, to seek out that information with that specific community. So if you're in, the mental health space, anything that's a little bit more sensitive, then Reddit might be your sweet spot to start.
that's incredible. And that actually lends itself to one of the questions that we had come in, which says, in light of the significant increases in STIs in the US, where are younger people getting their information about the risks of unprotected sex and consequences? And it seems like social media, Reddit may very well be the
Yeah.
avenue for a lot of that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because the biggest uptick in STIs in the US is actually in the geriatric population, who
Fascinating.
yeah, so they tend to not use a ton of social. So we're not in that space, but I know we have a lot of friends in diagnostics who are, and they're
Mhm.
turning to some of the more traditional media channels actually to reach that group of people. But young people continues to be on social. I imagine that there's a lot in a space like Reddit where it is more anonymous. And I know a lot of our startup friends that are in like a clinic setting where it's you go in, you get your care, and you pop back out, or it's telemedicine in the STI space specifically because they want that anonymity as they're going through something like that.
100%. I think that, yeah, you bring up such an interesting point around, really the demographic and the behaviors really do serve as like that is the means of how you're messaging to them. So I think really having that at the forefront probably will make the messaging and everything be that much more intentional. and more sticky, which is, I think, very important.
Totally. Yeah. Always audience first approach. Find where your people are and embed yourself into what's native to them. Don't try to create something and get them to come. That usually doesn't work.
100, go to where they are. 100% is the
Yeah.
move. I love that. And I think on that note, Bianca, as we wrap up, one of my favorite questions to ask really is centered around, I mean, you have done such incredible work within the company and even just all of the different hats that you play, you continue to play. I'm so curious, do you just have any general career advice for us? Any words of wisdom, maybe something a mentor had told you or something that you found that has been really helpful? I would love if you can share the love and share the insights with us.
Yeah. I think internships are hugely underrated. I can remember being the only one of my friends that was doing an internship while everyone else got to lay on the beach all summer down at the Jersey Shore. And that's how I got my start. I interned in a pharma media agency, again, by chance, and ended up making a career out of it. So I think definitely if you're on the call and you're still in your higher ed journey, take advantage of internships. That today is critical. And I think outside of that, I was just encouraged by a lot of the women in my family and mentors that I've had to just take the seat at the table. Don't be afraid to take the seat at the table. Like, own your knowledge. You have skills and knowledge that no one else in that room has, whether it's because it was an article that popped up in front of you. You are a valid member of whatever team you're on. You were hired for a reason. And so don't be afraid to, sit in the back of the room, come in, make your presence known, lean in. And from there, I think you'll have a lot of success. At least being a little bit ballsy has never done me wrong. So
Love that. That is what a great way to end. Thank you so much, Bianca, for sharing such your incredible insights. Just so fascinating and enlightening discussion. I so appreciate you taking the time to stop by.
thank you so much for having me.
So, I wanted to also remind everyone to join us next week for our next Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. Wanted to thank our sponsors for sponsoring this incredible conversation, as well as one huge shout out to Bianca for just all of the words of wisdom. I feel like we've all learned so much from the conversation. And so for folks that are interested in reaching out, her LinkedIn is in the chat as well. Wanted to give that notice. Make sure that you join us next time, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Bye, everyone.